time, you might be wondering, why Sworte talks and what Sworte stands for. Sworte, it's stories worth telling. And this NGO was founded, this initiative was founded about 5 years ago in 2015 to encourage a paradigm shift of mindsets and narratives in the way we view things in Nigeria. As a people, we tend to focus more on the negatives, the impossibilities, all the challenges we have to face, and forget to celebrate the positives that we have. Therefore, we founded Sworte Talks 5 years ago in order to be able to affect or to influence both our mindsets and the narratives we see around us. And therefore, we share stories based on topical issues, and we invite people who can speak to the relevant topical issue that we select at any point in time. Sworte Talks are held quarterly. We have had 16 events in the past. The events usually are held at Ajib Hall, Museum Center. But when the pandemic came about, I have a very dynamic team, dynamic team of young people who I work with. And you'll see Aderonke Adebanjo as our moderator today. There are other members, Mrs. Funke Fowler Amber, Miss Folawe Omikunle, Miss Omolade Badamosi, Mr. Okeofili, Mr. Victor Ajufo Obi, and his wife. We call him the tech guru of the team. And we have Sheung Kayode, we have Oyi Egbeyemi, we have other young people who work with us, Ajulu, Chinelo, and we come together from time to time and we sit down and we formulate or draft whichever topic we're going to be speaking to that's relevant to whatever might be happening in our space. Our last event was supposed to have been in March at Muzon, but because of the pandemic and the imminent lockdown and the community spread, we stepped down that public event. But the young team I work with, as I said, are very dynamic, and we quickly got ourselves together, started holding Zoom meetings, and we are today pivoting into online Sworte Talks. It's our very, very first event online, but it's very exciting that we are able to extend our boundaries beyond just Musan Center in Lagos, beyond Lagos. And on the platform today, we're going to have people from the diaspora. Many people have been invited from different countries to be able to join us to see the fantastic things. I can see Mrs. Ogunde just joining us, you're welcome. To see the fantastic things that are happening despite the challenges of this pandemic that's ravaging the whole world. I returned to Nigeria just a couple of days before the ban on air travel. And I was able to, share my experience with my daughter who lives in America. And I said from the first day of arrival, somebody from NCDC called me every day for 14 days just to find out how I was, what my health was like. And she was pleasantly surprised that that's going on in Nigeria. Yes, there are many positive things that are happening in Nigeria. Sworte Talks strives to restore hope into our community, for us to see things from a different perspective, to see that things are happening here and that we are not doing so badly after all. And therefore, for today, the theme of the event is hope against all odds. That is, during this pandemic, what are we doing in our communities in Nigeria? And it's been very obvious that the private sector has combined efforts in a lot of ways to complement whatever the government might be doing, because obviously the government cannot do it alone. And therefore we're going to hear fantastic stories, very encouraging stories, very uplifting stories of people who are making differences in their respective communities. And that's why we have tagged it Hope Against All Odds. That is, they are restoring hope into the communities with which they are relating at this point in time. So once again, I welcome you to today's event. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure there are many people on the platform who've been to our 16 events. Usually physical, we would celebrate, we would give gifts, but we applaud you by Zoom today for being there for us always. And for those who are joining for the very first time, please sit back and you're going to be pleasantly surprised and impressed by the stories that are going to be shared by our storytellers today. Thank you. I'll hand you over straight to our moderator for today, Ms. Aderonke Adebanjo.
Please unmute your video. Unmute yourself.
Oh, pardon me, my mic was muted. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ogunsanya. And thank you to everyone that has joined us this afternoon. This is our very first Sworte Talks event online. So we're really, really excited. It's our 17th edition, like Dr. Ogunsanya said. And we have some really amazing stories in store. Because we're online, we're trying to keep this as short and sweet as possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and start introducing our storytellers. And the way this works, for those of you whose first time it is, our storytellers will be sharing amazing stories. We'll also be taking your questions. If you look at your Zoom dashboard, you'll see a Q&A box. So as we go through the different stories, feel free to leave your questions there. Once we get to the Q&A section or session, pardon me, we will take your questions as we go along. So don't hesitate to wait till we get to the Q&A. If somebody's talking, sharing their story and something pops, a question pops up, feel free to put it in there real quick and we'll get to it as we get to the Q&A. So without further ado, let me start with one of our storytellers, Mrs. Adenike Ogunlesi. She is a visionary and an authority in the garment and manufacturing industry in Nigeria with well over 35 years of experience. She's the founder and chief responsibility officer of Rough and Tumble, which is a premium children's clothing brand with over 16 international standard retail outlets and an e-commerce platform. If you don't know Rough and Tumble, we need to pull you off or out from under the rock because it's a pretty well-known brand. Now, in the group of companies is Gatimo Apparel, which is a garment manufacturing facility manufacturing garments for Rough and Tumble, as well as school uniforms and corporate workwear. She's a non-executive director at Lafarge Holcim PLC, founding member and first president of the Network of Entrepreneurial Women. And she birthed the I Share Cause I Care Foundation, which feeds and clothes school children in local communities, and the Betty Okumboyejo Foundation, which is a fashion school empowering women with skills which lead to financial independence. She's happily married to Mr. Aderonke Ogunlesi, and she is blessed with 3 children. Please welcome Mrs. Adenike Ogunlesi. So no round of applause because we're not live, but please welcome her in your hearts because she's already on the platform. We also have Bright Kemasuode. He is a 21st century problem solver, a teens coach, an educator, a creative thinker, a graduate of the Madonna University. He has a BSc in human physiology. He's passionate about working with individuals to bring about social change. And he's a fellow at Teach for Nigeria, where he's focused on building the academic and non-academic outcomes of students in Nigeria, in underserved schools, in low-income communities. Now, he will be sharing with us as well an interesting story of how he's trying to combat the education problem, especially at this time during the pandemic. And of course, Mrs. Ogunlesi will be sharing something very interesting. I'm just gonna let her do all the talking with that because it's a very interesting thing that she's doing at this time as well. I know that we might be waiting for a couple of other speakers, but we do have Dr. Misbah Oleolo on. Welcome. He obtained his undergraduate qualifications in medicine and dentistry from King's College London. He did his postgraduate training in internal medicine, diabetes, and endocrinology in Yorkshire and West Midlands. And maxillofacial surgery in Wales and Manchester. Now, he returned to Nigeria in 2016 after 20 years in the UK's National Health Service, and he took up a role of a consultant physician at the Reddington Hospital in VI. And he will be telling us from a medical professional's perspective, who's been on the front lines, what is going on, and hopefully give us a ray of hope as we try to get through this crazy, crazy situation. We also have Adeju Thompson. He studied fashion design in the UK. He founded Lagos Space Program in 2017. It's a genderless fashion label based here in Lagos. Very interesting, I might add. Now, he aims to contribute to the global discourse on contemporary African design, and his work has actually been featured in the American Vogue magazine. He runs an NGO called Lekki Food, and he will be telling us what they have been doing during this pandemic to bring a bit of relief to communities around Lagos. Now, we're waiting for one more speaker, but I think we have enough people to get the show on the road. So I'm gonna go right back to Mrs. Ogunlesi to share with us this interesting thing that they're doing at Gatimo Apparel to offer some hope and just do some amazing work during this pandemic. So once again, welcome, Mrs. Ogunlesi, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I think I can't tell the story of what we're doing now in isolation of who we are and what we have been doing. So I think the story generally of our brand, Rough and Tumble, which is owned by a holding company called Gatimo Limited. The ethos of that is creating possibilities. So already we believe that as a group of people, it's in our DNA to seek out possibilities, what is possible, to define a scope and to just pursue it. So that is already in the DNA of who we are. So ours is a story of resilience, is a story of possibilities, a story of flexibility, and of course ambidextrity, which is within our DNA as a brand and as a company. So this whole thing came as a shock. It was a curveball that nobody was thinking of, nobody was looking at. If anybody told me the entire world would shut down literally, I would have said, not possible, maybe parts of it, but not, that the entire supply chain of the global supply chain would be dead in the space of a month. And so what did that mean? It meant that I already knew from experience that this was a major crisis. In 2017, there was a crisis. There was the devaluation of the Naira, which affected us quite badly. Because a lot of the raw materials that we use are still imported, which meant that our pricing structure, our entire business model needed to be restructured to begin to recover from this devaluation. And so it's already been two tough years. And last year we came out of this recession and this whole devaluation. And we were, beating the drums, saying 2020, we were going to do awesome things, great things. We're going to open this and do this. And then this curveball comes out of nowhere. And I understand as a leader that the way I respond and the way I see things will influence the way my whole organization will respond. So the first thing was, okay, after you've pulled your hair out, what next? This is not only you, this is affecting the whole world. So what next when you finish pulling out all your hair? Gladly, there's still some left. I didn't pull it all out, So for me, I began with the question, what next? So I've always found that the more powerful the question you ask, the more likely that you are going to get an answer that would empower you to be able to take action or think something through to the outcomes that you really want. So the first question, what next? The second thing was, my mind said, what do you mean, what next? The whole world is shut down. Now, my mind, I believe, and I have come to understand, is the biggest and best tool that I have. It is. If everything else fails me, I can't afford for my mind to fail me. It's the biggest tool that I have. Now, how am I going to use this tool? When I look out, what do I see? everything is not working. This is not working. But again, the question kept coming. What next? So what are you going to do? All right, so I started ticking the boxes. There's e-com. Well, we've almost completed e-com. But I don't want to be talking to my customers at this point in time about sales, about selling them children's clothes when their children are not going anywhere. It would be so insensitive, you know? So the only thing to do was to keep the call center, just calling our customers, asking how they were, how the children were, the children whose birthdays it was, we were still calling them to say happy birthday to them. So we kept in touch with our customers. So we didn't sort of abandon our customers. We sort of like kept in touch with them. But then there's Gatimo Apparel. We couldn't be producing for stores that were shut. So what were we going to do? And then somebody sends me a video that shows cloth face masks, you know, and then I start talking to a group of people in my industry, and it's like, look, we can do this. And then somebody says, oh, the government is looking for it to be brought in from China. And I thought, hell no, this isn't going to happen. We are not bringing them from China. If we didn't learn anything from the million boys, we learned we must industrialize Nigeria. How are we going to keep creating jobs for China when we need to create jobs for the children, for Nigerians, for Nigerian children? This is not something we cannot do. So some of us in the industry got together, look, we can do this thing. So we all started making samples. And the first set of samples I made, I remember my staff walked to work. It took them some of them took them 2 hours to walk because there was no transportation, you know, and I could never have done this, honestly, without my team. I couldn't. I would have had the idea, but if I did not have a team that trusted my leadership, that believed that this was a national call and that we had to rise, even though there was huge personal risk, we had to rise to this call. These things were not going to come in from China. We were going to make them locally. We're going to find cotton, we're going to do them locally. And what I discovered was once I set that ball rolling, momentum, it sort of like gathered momentum. And what did I find? We started getting orders. We needed to restructure the entire factory. We took out the specialist machines, replaced them with straight stitch machines. We had to set up processes immediately for efficiency so we could meet deliveries, timelines, and things like that. You know, it took a lot of will, a lot of mental toughness, as I always say, that whenever you're faced with a crisis, always look for the silver lining in the cloud, because there always is. I think it's Einstein that says that it is in the middle of a problem that you will find the solution to the problem. So if you are not willing to get into the middle of the problem, you are most unlikely to find the solution to the problem. So I think it speaks to my team, as well as the company that we have, as well as the culture of the company that we have, where we are resilient. In fact, it became, so what were we going to need? We realized that we needed to be able to follow the COVID protocols. Now, what could we add to that? We needed to, I need the guy who comes to fumigate, can he sanitize our premises? So he started sanitizing the premises. Every week it's sanitized. 6 a.m. this morning, it was sanitized already. The buses, we had to get BRT buses to bring the tailors. We had to get a caterer to cook for almost 300 people every day, you know? But I think what it means is that you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get the outcomes that you want. You can't be shy. The entrepreneurial mindset is one that is one of, this is possible. I can do this, I can achieve this. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurship so fascinating and so beautiful at times. So it's, I didn't do it alone. I did it with one of the best teams that I've ever worked with. So now we're making masks, we're making thousands, we're making like 25,000 masks a day, which is a lot of masks, if I might say. But the thing is, we're doing it from not doing anything to now producing these masks, where we're even looking to see how can we scale up, to producing medical scrubs, to now seeing can we get the PPE fabric in, but now locally we've been able to get water retardant fabric that we can now use to begin to make samples of PPEs to see what is doable locally. And I think the biggest takeaway from the entire COVID experience is that it's never been a better time for us as Nigerians to find creative solutions that are local to our problems. Never mind what's going on everywhere else in the world. How can we create local solutions that will work for us, that will work for the way we live, that will answer our needs? You know, this idea of working from home. How many people have electricity to work from home? How many people have access to the internet? You know, one of our graphic artists work from home. He just dialed in the next day and said, I couldn't do anything yesterday because I had no light. Now, what do you do with him? Do you pay him for that day? Is it his fault that there's no light? You know, there's so many issues around that. But I totally agree with Mrs. Ogunsanya. Please forgive me, I call her auntie. I know this is a professional panel, but she'll always be auntie to me because she was one of my mentors very early on, 20 years ago in my life, on this need to build yourself and build your mind and have clarity of purpose, clarity of intention, and know the outcomes that you want to achieve. So it's been an absolute pleasure to share this story with everyone. It's really been an amazing experience. And again, I will say it, I keep telling my team that my heart jumps out every time I think of them, and my heart just is filled with gratitude because I could be a leader and I could have looked back and nobody would have answered, but they all answered. And that's why I'm able to tell this story today. So for me, it's been awesome. It's totally awesome. I don't know how much time I have, but.
That was absolutely brilliant, Ma. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ogunlesi. So many follow-up questions I have, but we'll come to that during the Q&A. And to everyone watching, if you have any questions for Mrs. Ogunlesi, please drop them now in the Q&A box. We'll be vetting those questions and going through them just so we can keep this tight and short and sweet. I'm going to move on to our next speaker now, or storyteller as we like to call them. We've got Bright Kemasuode. Now, I already introduced him as a 21st century problem solver. He's a younger guy. He's with Teach for Nigeria, and he's doing something incredible with students to make sure that low-income students are able to still get educated, because we hear about, you know, online learning now, but, you know, for kids who aren't able to afford that, he's tried to find a solution. So Kema, or Bright, over to you.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Aderonke. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'll quickly dive into what we have for today, Hope Against All Odds. Before COVID-19, it's no news that we have 13 million children, aged children that are supposed to be in school in Nigeria as out-of-school children. So we can only imagine what it is at the moment, the millions of children we have that are out of school. When COVID-19 started in the month of December, we never thought that it would hit us this bad in Nigeria, so we didn't really prepare on what to do. But fast forward March, the government had to close down schools in Ogun State, in Lagos, and as well as every other part of the country. At that point in time, I was, I was overwhelmed with the situation, having to understand the peculiarities of the kind of children that we teach as Teach for Nigerian fellows. These are kids that can't even afford 3 square meals. I'm talking about balanced diet. These are kids that don't come to school with notebooks that we have to provide learning materials for. So the question is, how can these kids survive if COVID-19 hits their community? At that point in time, I didn't have enough money to start saying, okay, let's get on, let's provide them with food, let's provide them with these palliatives and that. But the first thing that came into my mind was, these guys can understand their language. So let's start from there. Start from what you have. I called upon my team and we decided to convert the WHO guidelines into the 3 major languages in Nigeria: Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. We also moved forward to do that in other languages as well as Pidgin English, because we believe that is spoken across the country. After that, we have the questions that kept coming. Now you've done this. This has gotten to millions of Nigeria, those online, the few that are not online. What next? Your learners are not learning. We are not so sure when next we'll be back to school. At this point in time, we decided as an organization, the Teach for Nigerian management and some of the fellows, to swing into action of how we could make our children learn in a time like this. We thought about starting up the radio program with the Ogun State government. We had lots of discussions with the stakeholders. We had produced all the necessary contents, and we were energized and ready to shoot and make sure that our kids in those communities are learning. But fast forward, we had to see that even the Ogun State government, we are saddled with the responsibility of tackling the spread of COVID-19. And at that moment, there wasn't any response forthcoming. But we couldn't have sat down and expect that our children would just be there, not learning. While kids in high-brand schools in Lagos and Abuja had already started the third term because they had opportunities of learning with tech tools. We decided to look for more ways. We had to go back to the drawing board. We had to discuss what to do, how to do it best. We were looking at best ways we could impact not just our learners at this time, but also the teachers. Nobody was talking about the teachers. Nobody really understood if post-COVID-19, if these teachers had the necessary skill. Before now, I had started an organization, Sworte, in the course of the fellowship, where we bridge ICT gaps and we build individuals who would stand to fit into modern day workforce by building them with global 21st century skills. At this point in time, we decided to start a teacher's training. The question is, yes, a teacher's training for low-income community teachers. Most of them don't have smartphones. What mediums would you use in doing that? We decided to do that with WhatsApp. I'm glad to let you know that at the moment, we are training over 75 public school teachers on our WhatsApp platform, on STEM skills, on critical thinking, creativity, collaboration. And why did we think about this being important? It was because we're looking at post-COVID-19. We are all conscious about the fact that teachers and students might most likely start moving into online learning, but our teachers prepared for it. If they are not prepared for it, who is saddled with the responsibility of doing that? We didn't think that we had to wait for the government. We quickly swapped into action to make sure we are doing that. After that, we decided to launch a radio program, and we've been going back and forth, like I said, with the government. So far, we are hoping that the radio program will be launched in a week or two, but we're also looking for other mediums in which we could reach out to our learners. We decided to launch two programs, one of them called Learning to Learners, and the other called Learning to Kids. For Learning to Learners, we decided to rebrand those contents that we have produced for the radio program into simple contents that these children would be able to learn at home. Now, we quickly launched into action by connecting with fellows who are still in their place of primary assignment. We reached out to them, gave them these contents, and we asked them to, okay, you go forth, reach out to your learners, reach out to their parents, share these things to them, and we would have a way of doing a follow-up with that. I'm also happy to let you know that as at this moment, we'll be able to achieve the sharing of almost 60 contents, so I would say 60 worksheets, just last week. This was just done last week in a community called Ayetoro by one of our wonderful fellow in person of Joe Martins, as well as Shukuka. But that wasn't enough. We aren't going to stop there. We're looking at continuing impacting our learners. We are looking at impacting over 1,000 public school learners, and we're just getting across to 60 at the moment. We are looking at for better options we could do that. We decided to do the Learning to Kids program. We decided to launch it. And how are we getting that done? We are reaching out to other stakeholders like the clerics, the imams, the pastors, the community leaders. And the question is, hello guys, we can't allow our kids to keep staying at home and not learning. There's going to be life after post-COVID-19, right? There's going to be life after this whole situation that we are faced with. So how do we work together to see that we will be able to make these kids learn? So far, we're able to get some, I would say some pastors and a few imams who are buying into the idea, and we're looking at launching fully next week for that particular project. We are hoping at reaching nothing less than 1,000 pupils. At this time around, we're not just looking for learners that we had worked with in the classroom. We're looking at a community spread of educational opportunity for these kids who most of the times would not have an opportunity to learn, except learning is brought to them. I'm also glad to inform you that just this morning, I was able to also reach out to a community in Delta State where I discussed with the cleric. It would be allowing us to use this public address system to be able to reach out to the children in those communities by playing some of the contents we have produced by sharing out some of the workbooks and worksheets we have. These are some of the things we have been doing all along. And we are very, very amazed at the turnaround. So like the meeting I had today, you have parents asking and saying, so how many of my kids can I get over here? What and what is needed? So that is to tell you that these children really need to learn, but their parents are limited to what they can do and how they can do that. It has been a long journey for us. When I was contacted that I'll be giving a talk on the Hope Against All Odds talk, it's something that really resonated with the work we've been doing in Teach for Nigeria this COVID-19 period. We've been able to drive so many learning ideas across the communities. We have the likes of a fellow who is currently making content in the tablets and sharing to our kids in the community where she works. These are all, and there are lots more in the pipeline that we are doing. And I'm glad to be here to say that teachers, irrespective of what you are going through at the moment, notwithstanding the situations, you could actually do something to get across to that learner when necessary. So we don't need to keep waiting for the government. We don't have to keep hoping and praying. This is a time where, as a nation, we all will be seated to say, what is that little thing I can do in my own little to invest in the nation I'm believing in? So I want to say a big thank you to Sworte Talk for this opportunity. I want to say a big thank you to Aderonke A for also listening and everyone listening out there. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Aderonke, are you there?
Yes, pardon me. I think I got disconnected for a minute there.
Hello, Mr. Aderonke, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Thank you so much, Bright. Great story. I definitely have some questions, and I'm sure our participants have questions as well. So we'll be coming to that in just a moment. Just to remind you all who are watching us, joining us, please leave your questions in the Q&A box. We will be taking tons and tons of questions once we get through all the different stories. Okay, I'm going to move on now to Dr. Oleolo, who works at Reddington Hospital as a consultant physician, to give us, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about, what is happening from a healthcare perspective, and hopefully offer a bit of hope in the midst of everything that's going on. So Dr. Oleolo, over to you.
Right, thank you very much, Aderonke. Good afternoon, everyone. And I thank the organizers for the opportunity to share my story or tell my story. So what I'd like to start with is, this says we're hoping against all odds. I'd want us to start with understanding what the odds are. So let's try and understand the disease we're dealing with. So COVID, and please, Aderonke, if you'd be so kind as to let me know when I'm within 1 minute of the time that you've offered me. So
okay,
when I'm within 1 minute, just give me a warning, please.
Okay.
Thank you. So to try and understand this virus, which started in China, in an area called, in a town called Wuhan, or in a city called Wuhan, Hubei province. It's a new variety of family of viruses that had existed and that had caused disease in the past. Now, it spread rather rapidly around the world, and from an outbreak of a disease in China, it has become what is a pandemic. And a pandemic essentially is a widespread contagious epidemic that covers quite a number of geographic areas. We're not going to go too much into the technical details. What I would like to do, though, is to play a numbers game to try and understand the seriousness of COVID. So we are going to multiply by 2 28 times. And how are we going to do that? So if you multiply 1 by 2, you get 2, and 2 by 2, you get 4, and 4 by 2, you get 8, 8 by 2, you get 16, and 16 by 2, you get 32, 32 by 2, you get 64, and if you carry on that way, you get 64, 128, 256, 5112, 5112, 1024, for 2048. By the time you get to number 28, so by the time you've multiplied by 2 the 28th time, you would get to, from my calculation, 268,435,446. Now, let me try and put this in perspective. So, if on day 1 you get somebody who has COVID and they make contact, because the way COVID, it's got something called an infectivity ratio. How infectious is it? And on average, between 2 and 3 people who come in contact with a COVID sufferer will pick up the disease. So it means if you have 1 person, potentially 2 people will be infected. And from those 2 people, you may get 4 people. And from those 4 people, you get 8. If that process carries on continuously for 28 days, essentially from 1 person, without social distancing, without masks, without hand washing, and unfortunately without, and I know this is not a nice thing to say, without some of those people being hospitalized and being taken out of circulation, the disease will spread in such a way that potentially after 28 days, mathematically, you can end up with 268 million people infected. That is greater than the population of Nigeria. And therefore, if you go to the United States and look at their data, you will find that the exponential growth or the rapid growth that they suffered has come from that sort of mathematical behavior by the virus. So that is the odd that we face. Now, we don't live in America, we don't live in the United Kingdom, we don't live in Spain, and we don't live in Italy. We don't have the medical facilities that those countries have. We don't have free healthcare like the NHS. The health insurance coverage in Nigeria is probably about 9 or 10%. So we're between a rock and a very, very hard place. So to go searching for hope in all of that, I think is to ask a huge amount. But here is what I say. Now, when you look around the world, the reason why people educate their populace is historical. So for us as Africans, we didn't start with Western education. So education for the young African child often meant their father taking them to the farm, them learning how to farm, learning how to hunt. So essentially, it was a series of skills that people picked up so that in life, they could make their way. So education really is pointless if we have all these educated people with degrees, and as a people, we cannot solve our problems. Education has got to be a problem-solving tool. So, on the medical front, what have we been doing? So the first problem that I became particularly concerned about was when I looked at what was happening abroad, particularly in Spain, where 10% of the people who died in Spain were healthcare workers. I became very, very worried because in Nigeria, we already have a rather peculiar problem. And that problem is that when we produce healthcare workers, whether that is doctors, nurses, radiologists, or radiographers, or physiotherapists, these people end up abroad. They get sucked up into someone else's system that has not contributed to their training. So we have brain drain. Now, if we then have coronavirus drain because those people are dying at the front line, then it becomes really problematic. And the question is, what is it that's going to stop people at the front line contracting COVID? Or what are the options that reduce the chances of people on the front line or contracting the disease? So we came up with a number of solutions. The first was, well, America can't get PPEs, the UK can't get PPEs. You may be familiar with the recent news item where the Sheikh of Dubai sent the NHS, I think he was going to send them a plane load of PPEs. So if they need a plane load of PPEs, we need like 20 plane loads of PPEs because we don't even produce these things here. And if you think about our financial well-being, we've lost revenue because the price of oil has dropped, people are on lockdown, the small and medium scale businesses are not working. Where are we going to get these PPEs from? So I called in a young man who makes bin bags. So bin bags are those things that we locally in Nigeria call nylon or nylon, whatever accent you choose to put on it. So I got someone who makes nylon bags for hospitals and said, look, young man, I know you make nylon bags or nylon bags, but it's not nylon bags that I need off you. I want you to source a material that is resistant to tear and that is waterproof that I can use as PPE. So my dear young man went off, came back with a nylon bag. And he came with a long sheet of nylon bag and put a big hole in the top where you wear it over your head. So I shook my head and said, Chairman, this is not what I had in mind. What I really have in mind is something that you can wear like a suit that's got a hood and that covers the individual completely so that when they're working, they are not worrying about contamination from the patient, which could then give them an infection. So he went away and started contacting people. I've just got 1 minute left. 2, okay. So off he went and he came back with this material, which is neoprene and PVC. And today we are churning out PPEs that are made in Nigeria. I know people are going to say it hasn't gone through the standards and the robust testing that medical equipment should go through. That is true. But if we do not do this, people are going to contract COVID and they're going to die. So I have a consignment that's going to far off Gombe tomorrow morning from my lot of PPEs, which we've made in Nigeria. And therefore, the future that I see is that going forward, these things are probably going to be made in Nigeria. In addition to reduce contact between patients and healthcare professionals, we have instituted what we call telemedicine. So I have always had an app called HiDoc. And HiDoc had been dormant for a very long time, but now COVID has made HiDoc come alive, and HiDoc has been activated in no less than 10 centers around Lagos, and we're hoping to take it around the country. More importantly, the thing that gives me the greatest hope, though, is the skill set and the Nigerian people. There is a friend of mine on a group of doctors called Doctors for Change. These are people who trained abroad and came back to Nigeria because they're Nigerians and they felt a responsibility to Nigeria. And his mantra is, the Nigerian patients are worth it. The Nigerian patients are worth it. And the thing that gives me the greatest confidence, more than the fact that we can make PPEs here, more than the fact that we have money that has been sourced from the World Bank, more than the fact that we have telemedicine, is that we have the people who have the skills to look after us should people need medical intervention. Thank you very much for inviting me to Stories Worth Telling. I'll rest my story there. Thank you.
Unmute, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Oleolo. And once again, we'll be asking you some more questions, follow-up questions from the story that you've just shared. We're going to move on to our next storyteller. Remember, if you have any questions, and I do see the questions coming in, so please keep them coming. Use the chat box or the Q&A box to drop your questions in there. And once we're done with all our storytellers, we will be taking your questions, and I can't wait to get to that because there's just so much to ask. But our next speaker, storyteller, Adeju Thompson, is a fashion designer, like I mentioned earlier, who has started a food drive that is bringing some relief in these times, and I'm going to hand it over to him. Adeju, over to you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Please go ahead. Yes.
Hi. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. My name is Adeju Thompson, and I'm a fashion designer. I do, before the statewide mandated lockdown, I had been in isolation for about 2-3 weeks. And in that time, I was just like mostly indoors, just trying to be as productive as possible. Then I think it was probably at the 3rd week, I decided to go down for a walk or something. And I saw a lot of people I'd become quite friendly with in my area, because I live in Ikoyi. And, you know, they started to lament to me that, oh, Mr. Ade, like, you know, we're hungry, we haven't eaten anything. So I just started, you know, I just invite them upstairs to my home and give them some little food I had. And I think I did this for like 3-4 days, and I realized it wasn't very sustainable. So I started to think about what I could do, you know, to like, you know, fix this problem. So I think I took about a day or two. I was like, you know, on my street, there's about 3 or 4 different women who provide meals to like sell food, like food vendors. And I had this idea of like, you know, rather than sort of like, because I'm not into catering, I have no idea about how to like, you know, like I have no idea of how to like, you know, do like, I'm into food business. So I decided to go downstairs to speak to them and just like inquire about what it would entail to provide meals for people daily. You know, usually when you have these ideas in the beginning, they seem incredibly like, you know, sort of like big, you know, a bit daunting. But I found it quite interesting to see how simple it was. So they told me like, you know, to provide a meal for one person will be 300 naira, and this 300 naira meal consists of a pack of rice, a piece of meat, water, and a fruit. So so if we say, okay, a meal is 300 naira, so if we're going to provide 100 meals, that would be 30K. So I was like, okay, good. Like, you know, I was quite surprised how cheap that was. So I decided to go upstairs, do a proposal. I got a friend of mine who's an amazing artist who lives in the UK to make me a logo. And yeah, I just sat down, did the proposal, and I sent it out to my network. And it was so funny because around that time, because I'd been out of work for a while, I wasn't really, you know, working at Lagos Space Program at that period, you know, so I didn't even have enough income, but I knew that, you know, the lack of funds, you know, that weren't available to me didn't mean I couldn't do something, because I knew that my network and also like, you know, the sort of like, you know, things I'd achieved over like, you know, the past few years, you know, I knew what I was capable of. So by the time I sent out the proposal out to my friends, family, clients, you know, about what I wanted to do. So the initiative is called Feed Ikoyi. And within like an hour or two of the following day, I think we'd raised about 100,000 naira. So the day after that, we provided our first 100 meals. So we had done this for about a week. So the first day was 100 meals. The second day was 150. The third day was 500. And how it works really is I don't have any inventory of food or any stockpile. What I do is that I get the money, you know, the sponsorship for the food, and I commission these women to provide the meals. So I had a collecting point on my street, and all the women you know, drop off their meals there at about 10:30 a.m. in the morning. And, you know, and we start like, you know, another thing I did was that I like the idea of also empowering a lot of the guys on the street who are out of jobs. So I hired the 2 Uber drivers, and also and I got like about 11 people to help with packing the meals, and I'll pay the guys who were packing the meal about 700 naira, and I'll pay the Uber drivers 5,000 naira. So once the meals are collected, I'd assign like maybe 300 meals to go, like to be driven around Ikoyi. Then maybe another 300 might go to like, you know, Obalende. So like I said, so Feed Ikoyi grew quite organically, and people started to reach out to me about how they could help, because I guess it started with my friends. My friends would share with their parents would share with their friends. So I got reached out to by a neighbor of mine, Mrs. Shenjobi of Garden Fusion. And she was like, oh, I realized, you know, you live on my street. Like, what can I do to help? So we decided we decided to meet up the next day, and I showed her about, I walked her through the process of, feed koi, how we sort out the meals. And she was just like, I guess she was very fascinated that, it was a young person, behind this initiative. So she was really helpful, like, also like, helping us with like funding. And, as a millennial, like, I'm a very, I do things because, like, I'm very like emotional person, and I was really bothered that there was so much hunger around me. So, like, if I have an idea, I just want to do it. So it was really nice to, like, have, different people, so, like, say, okay, Adeju, I know you have this idea. We need to do it this way. We need to, like, speak to people this way. We need to reach out to this person. We need to think about also maybe, potentially, like, registering Fidikoi as a legal entity, so we do these things properly. So it was really nice, within 3 weeks where we were really, really, like, operating, we built this, like, great sense of community, and everyone was really, really, like, proud about what we were doing. I was so proud of the Uber drivers and the guys, because they drive around, and the idea was that once they go around the Koyi, they're meant to take videos and pictures, and they'll send the most amazing pictures and videos. And as of 2 days ago, Fidikoyi has provided 13,000 meals, and and it's really nice. Like, so what we've done since the lockdown was eased, I decided to, like, move around the area and sort of, like, try to pinpoint what communities still needed our help. So there's this community that we provided food for during the whole 3 weeks of the lockdown. It's called Panama. It's at James George Extension in Ikoyi, and it's very a lot of people, because when we put a lot of, like, pictures of our operations there, and a lot of people ask, is that Ikoyi? And we were really, really surprised. It's a very poor community. So we decided that, okay, what we're gonna do is that, since a lot of adults cannot, like, go out and, like, fend for themselves, we're gonna, like, prioritize the meals for the kids. So we've been providing 50 meals every day to the Panama community, as well as 50 meals so there's a vendor we have in Parkview. She's she was providing food throughout the entire 3 weeks. And she let us know, okay, look, we've been doing this for a while now, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. But a lot of people that we provide meals for are Muslims. And, so I was wondering if it's possible for us to, like, maybe move the meals down towards the evening, so we can, like, be able to, like, maybe help provide meals for Muslim people who are breaking their fast. So we've been providing 50 meals every day, for that community in Parkview. So they just send us videos and footage of them distributing the meals, and I sort of, like, put it on the Instagram account, which sort of acting as sort of like a form of, like, archive, of our operations. It's really interesting and really refreshing. We got so much help. We got help from the Nigerian army, and they'd come with us every day to Obalende, because the first time we went to Obalende, because I was just very, like, as soon as the money started to, like, come in, and it started coming in a lot. I think we raised about 5 million naira. I decided, okay, we need to, like, start expanding our operation. So we decided to go. The first time we decided to go to Obalende, we sort of ambushed, not in the very, like, oh, don't try to attack us, but they were hungry, so they were, like, there's not a lot of social distancing, and so we had to, like, drive off. And I think I put the footage on the Instagram account, and Mrs. Shenjobi, reached out, and she was, hey, what can we do about this? So she reached out to a few of our contacts, and we finally got in touch with an army general who, from the next day after, he'd come with about 6 or 7 men, and we'll go to Obalende, and we just, like, try to, like, and I guess with the Nigerian army being there and everything, there was a bit more order, and we were safe. Unfortunately, we couldn't have as much social distancing as we would have liked, but there was an appropriate sort of, like, separation between the crowd and our vehicle. And every day we'd provide at least 350 to 400 meals, sometimes 500 in Obalende. And I was really, really proud, because, like, I met so many people and heard so many stories. I met this guy who was like, look, without you guys, we won't have eaten I want to eat today, and I won't eat again until you come tomorrow. You know, people saying I haven't eaten in 2 days, like, you know, and this was really, really grateful. And that stuff really weighs heavy on my heart. And it was a responsibility I took very seriously. There was a day when, towards the end, the money's coming in, started sort of like, you know, thin a bit. So we weren't able to deliver as much food as we had in the past. I think that day we provided about maybe 200 or 250 meals at a Berlin day. So that didn't really go anywhere. And these people had been, you know, they know what time we were here, so they were all like lining up. But like, I think we ended up providing for maybe about a quarter of the people, you know, that were there. And when the meals went, I actually just walk up to them and say, look, I'm really sorry that, you know, that we couldn't, like, you know, provide what the usual amount we do. I'm really sorry. And I think they were really surprised because I don't think they're used to that sort of kindness. And like, oh, wow, thank you so much. And I was like, no, but thank you. Like, you know, I feel responsible for you guys. And, you know, and you guys were expecting us, like, you know, so, yeah. So, I mean, it grew really organically. And, you know, it wasn't like an ego trip. You know, it was just a group of people who really, really, really wanted to do a little bit to help. And I'm really proud that, you know, once it's all over, you know, I can look back and say, oh, wow, this is what I was able to, you know, offer my community when it needed me the most. Yeah. So that's Fidikoyi, and that's what we were able to achieve.
Amazing. 13,000 meals just from a very simple idea that seemed daunting, but you decided to go after it, and look at what you've achieved. Well done. Absolutely great story. Thank you, Adeju, for sharing that. And I'm sure we have questions coming in for you as well. So we'll be taking those questions. We're going to move on to our final speaker, storyteller for this evening, and then we will take all of your questions, and then we'll wrap it up. It's been so inspiring already. Now, our final storyteller is Doyinsola Ogunye. She is, I didn't get to introduce her earlier because she hadn't joined us, but she's here now. She's a goalkeeper ambassador under the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She's the CEO of the Mental and Environmental Initiative for Children, which is also known as MEDIC. It's an initiative that's geared towards addressing societal inadequacies that affect the mental and environmental growth of children. It has also led to the establishment of the Kids Clean Club in low-income private schools and public schools across Lagos. And she's doing something, again, yet another interesting story with water during this pandemic. And I'll let her just tell us exactly what she's doing with water, probably an area that people hadn't really thought about, that there was a need in that area. So welcome, Doyi. I'm gonna let you tell us what you're doing with water during this time. Unmute.
Hey, hello. Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, and I must apologize again. I just left the village. I'm actually on route Lekki from Ibeji Lekki, and that's where I do most of my work right now. And when this COVID-19 pandemic started, I was actually focused more on food. You know, everybody was like, oh, what's everybody going to eat and things like that. And there's this advert that they keep putting out, and it says, wash your hands for 20 seconds with soap and water if you don't have sanitizer. And most of these communities I work with, they can't even afford sanitizer, because there was a time where the sanitizers and then the face mask, the prices just went like all the way up. So I was a little bit worried about them, that, okay, how are these people going to cope if this, you know, this virus gets into their communities, because the community spread had started. So, you know, I said to myself that, okay, if we provide good, you know, water for these communities, they can actually wash their hands with soap and then be safe from the virus, you know. So I started looking for areas where we could help. It was almost impossible to build a borehole at the time. So, you know, there are these tankers that supply water to parts of Lagos State. And I started to reach out to them, and I'm like, okay, how much would it cost to get 10,000 liters to a particular community? And they were like, oh, it's 10,000 naira. And I was like, okay, fine. So I went to these communities, and there's no storage facility. There's really nothing. You know, they just have small buckets and 25-liter kegs. So it was then it dawned on me that, you know what, I had to do a little bit more infrastructural work. So I started looking for people. So I started the COVID-19 water challenge. And it was at the same time yeah, I say this a lot because I wanted to really sink into young people. You know, it was at the same time where people were doing this Don't Rush challenge and Pop Daddy challenge. And, you know, so I looked at my social media. I'm like, what is going on? You know, every day that's what was trending. You know, so I started the COVID-19 water challenge to challenge people to at least do something little. You know, so I was like, you know, whatever type of water you can even support with, whether it's a pure water, whether it's dispenser water, whether it's, you know, tanks of water and things like that. And people started getting interested, people started donating, and we started going into those communities. We started with pure water. It was the first time I did the pure water. I personally do a lot of cleaning and you know, recycling. So the pure water one, I wasn't even feeling it at all. So I said, okay, how about we get good water that they can actually what's the word? They can boil, or they can actually, you know, good potable water. Because thinking about washing of hands, how about cooking? You know, a lot of people were giving them food, raw food, but there was really no water to cook this food. And people will even ask, okay, you've given us food now, we can't cook it. You know, you've given us gari, we can't even drink it. We need water, you know. So I started to push for good quality, you know, water, so that we don't move from, I started saying this thing to my friends and people that cared to listen at the time, that so that we don't move from fighting corona to fighting cholera, because there's bad water everywhere. So we started to do that. We started to get to, and for you to get into these communities and do this kind of work, for people that do field work a lot, you have to, it's a process. You have to go to the ballets, you have to talk to them, you have to speak Yoruba, and, you know, all the whole works. So every time I went to the communities like that, I would take sanitizer, I would take face masks for them, I'll protect myself, I'll take food for them and things like that. So we started construction in Langbasa community. We're going to start in Baduri. And as all that was going on, I have friends outside the country that would say, oh, Doyinsola, there's a community dear to my heart. I want you to support us, you know, in that community. So I started doing a lot of work in Ibejuleki, because a lot of people won't want to do that commute. So the first time I did that was on the 30th of March. And then we went there. That was like a day before the first lockdown. I don't know, 30th or 31st, one of those days. Because I remember that day was everybody was running around. Lagos was jammed. You know how it is, traffic and everything. So we went to the community. It was Akpakin community. We got sponsorship. You know, we went there. And, you know, like the last speaker said, we were literally mobbed, because what we had with us wasn't enough to go around. It's never enough. So the first time, you know, we're trying to reach out to them, okay, everybody line up and things like that. But after a while, when they saw that, see, if we don't, you know, so they literally took everything. And I've not been to that community since then. But after that, another person from Canada reached out to me and was like, oh, we need to support more communities, you know. So they put money together, they sent us things, and we went back to Ibejuleki, and we started to give, you know. And then and when we went the last time, we were a bit more cautious, you know. So we stayed in the car. When we saw that, oh, this thing is about to become a mob, we just go to the next community. You get, so social distancing was a major issue the first time. And then, you know, we started to emphasize, you know, every time, stay back. If we see we're coming, if we see they're coming close, we just move to the next community, and then maybe come back 3 hours later or something like that. So gradually, we started to have that understanding. So in Ibejuleki right now, we've reached out to about 15 communities in Ibejuleki. We focus more on the children because we're able to, you know, talk to them. We're able to teach them, you know, these things. And even talking about corona, we really don't only talk about corona. We talk more about hygiene, because the coronavirus is just one of the 1,000 viruses out there, you know. So protecting yourself is not just from coronavirus, it's also, you know, from every other form of bacteria or virus that can be, you know, around. And we also encourage them to eat healthy. We encourage them to, you know, take vitamin D, which is, you know, basic, you know, sunlight, you know, and things like that. And we also try to promote that, because a lot of people are being locked up. You know, they are at home, they don't open their windows, they become very susceptible to different types of diseases, including mental health, you know, anxiety, depression, and so many other things like that. And sometimes it can get really overwhelming because apart from myself and my partner, I just have friends around, you know, that help. Some friends offer to drive me to these places, you know, some friends offer to pay the bills sometimes. And, you know, because we have partnership in Ibeju, I'm able to get accommodation, you know, there as well. And going into these communities, you know, even me being in these communities sometimes just give them hope that, oh, somebody even remembers us, and, you know, and things like that. And I'm just coming from one of the communities now, and, you know, we're able to share a few things for them. We also found out that they don't have water. They don't have water there. And it really breaks my heart, because for people that understand Yoruba, the name of the community is called Igbo Olomi. And Igbo Olomi means, you know, bush that has water. And the irony is there's really no water there, you know, and there's really no clean water. I beg your pardon. So many things to be done. And my prayer is that, my hope is that everything we're doing in our little spaces actually inspires other people to go out in their own communities and do something. You know, so when people ask me, Doyinsola, what can I do? Sometimes I'm like, just step out of your house and do something for people in your community. And then if many people do that, and if more people, you know, see your videos doing that, it will inspire them to do something as well. You know, and for people that have given up hope in Nigeria, when they see videos like that, or maybe not just Doyinsola, or many other people doing something, young people doing something, it will let them know that, you know, we post-COVID, or in this period, I don't know what this period is called right now, but we can all do something, you know, to make a change and make a difference wherever we are. So that has basically been my story. It's been exciting. It's been very challenging. But every day we're able to do something new and do something different for people, and, you know, eventually give them hope generally. So
Fantastic. Thank you, Doyin.
Thank you so much.
And well done with what you're doing. So that wraps up the storytelling part of our program this evening. If you have any questions, once again, and we do see all the questions coming in, please pop up over to the Q&A box now and drop your questions there. I'm gonna jump right to the questions because of time. And I have a few questions myself, because every time I listen to our storytellers tell their stories, I always have a few questions of my own. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to merge all the questions together. Some of them are similar, and I'll just try to merge the questions together so that we can take as many as possible. So I'm gonna jump right back to Mrs. Ogunlesi. You talked a lot about your team. You talked a lot about the mind being, you know, the greatest tool that you have, especially in this sort of situation. You know, if you don't have anything else, you mentioned you have your mind, and that's what you should leverage at a time like this. I'm very curious to know, you know, what do you think helped you prepare for a time like this? Nobody saw COVID coming. But, you know, in the midst of everything that has happened, you've been able to pivot, like you said, and really bring about change. You talked about the fact that you have 300 people coming to your facility pretty much every day to work. So what do you think was a strength for your organization that prepared you, without you even knowing that this was coming, to combat this situation and to do the things that you're doing now? And I'll just merge that with a question that came in from Irere Mena Felix Otuorim, who says, how were you able to access funding during this time to achieve what you've been able to achieve? So,
okay. Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure listening to everybody. I'm thoroughly amazed and in awe of what the young people are doing. I'm totally inspired by it. And I believe that we should all find ways to support Doyin and Adeju. I'll answer the last question first, very quickly. So we're a technology-driven organization. So 99% of our transactions are done online. We don't pay out cash unless somebody, even the people who supply us things have to have a bank account, and we have to be able to transfer money to them. So, excuse me, I don't have COVID. I just have something stuck in my throat. So, I think that was the first thing. So we were able to transfer money to those we wanted to buy things from. And it comes from wanting to build a structured business so that it would outlive me. That's always been my dream. So whatever I can put in place that makes it easier for the business to run without me, then it will happen. Now, what has prepared me for the capacity or the ability to pivot so quickly? I think the life of an entrepreneur is a life of challenge and crisis. And challenge and crisis is a constant companion of every entrepreneur all over the world. And your choice to respond or not respond is what will usually determine your future outcomes. So to be able to pivot and respond so quickly and have my mind in a place where I'm an outcomes thinker, I had to go through a lot of personal development where I had to learn new habits by defining, first of all, who it is I wanted to be. What kind of leader did I want to be? What kind of world did I want to leave behind? And what kind of impact did I want to have in the world? Beginning with my immediate sphere of influence, which is my own organization. So what kind of culture did we want to create? So it's a culture that has a very open mindset, a very flexible mindset. They always say that the tree that cannot bend to the wind will break. And so you have to be flexible. You have to be ambidextrous. You have to be able to switch right, switch left. You have to be nimble and not heavy. So for me, it's the years of personal development, commitment to personal development, finding out what are my strengths, what are my areas of weakness or areas of improvement. What are the areas where I don't have the competency, but I can hire the competency and let the people that have the competency and capacity do what it is that they do best. So I think it's about sort of like going into myself, getting to know myself. I always say everything begins with self. What do you want? Anybody who comes to me, that's the first question I will always ask you. And I will repeatedly ask you that question until you know what you want, because that's what I did to myself. When you have clarity on what it is you desire, on what it is that you want to see, on what it is that you want to do, how you want to impact the world, nothing can stop you. You'll be willing to pay whatever price there is to pay. You'll be willing to pay that price to see that thing birthed and to come to life. From what Doyin is saying, it wasn't an easy thing. She could have been mobbed. Adeju could have been mobbed. They could have been mobbed. But they had a compelling vision of what they wanted to achieve. And so they didn't allow anything to stop them. They just went ahead and they did it because they prepared their mind. There's no option here. We just have to do whatever it takes. And I think it speaks to you having the clarity of intention, the clarity of outcomes, the clarity of who you are, and not being afraid to be yourself, to be your authentic self. I think that's one of the most important things for me, is just be who you are. And if you don't know who you are, find out who you are. And like who you are, love who you are, invest in who you are, so that the best version of you and the greatness that lies within you is released into the world, and you can gift the world of your talent and leave it much better than you found it. So for me, a commitment to personal development is a very high value on my value list. Authenticity is very high on my value list. Empathy is very high on my value list. Love is very high. Trust is very high on my value list. So these are things that I personally value, and therefore I am willing to make the time and to commit to them and to be persistent, to persevere until I become the kind of leader that can manage my emotional state to respond rather than react in situations, so that I can put myself in a position where I can think about outcomes rather than, oh, the world is coming to an end. It's world without end. COVID will end, but the world is not going to come to an end. We're humans, we're adaptable, we're flexible. we can change, we can change. And the mind that is willing to change, that is willing to succumb to change, will always evolve and find ways to manage new situations, to cope with new situations and new challenges and new crises. Nobody ever promised anybody a world without crisis or a world without challenge. You might as well be dead. There's always going to be challenges and there's always going to be a crisis. But when you train yourself emotionally to be able to respond rather than react, I think that is the best thing you can gift yourself as a person. So I hope that answers.
Wonderful. Yes, absolutely. Great nuggets. Absolutely great. And I wanted to ask that question because this is a great time, goes without saying, for self-reflection for a lot of businesses, especially entrepreneurs who maybe weren't prepared for this, adequately. I mean, nobody knew it was coming, but I think you've offered some really good tips for reflection post-COVID, that they can apply post-COVID.
And I think if you've done business long enough in Nigeria, you know that there are so many inconsistencies that can come out of nowhere.
Exactly.
That you have to be ready and you have to be prepared. But if you are ready in the fight and flight mode, you'll be highly strong and highly stressed. So you have to be able to respond from a place of strength, from a place of courage, from a place where you can look at what is happening without getting emotionally entangled with it. And you can make a decision and make a choice that, let's do this. And, if it doesn't work, try another way. After all, this gentleman tried 10,000 ways before he found one way that created the light. Right, so, you have to keep trying. I say, when you do business in Nigeria, you have to build your mental muscles, and your mental muscles must be tough, because that's the only way you will survive in Nigeria.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ogunlesi. I'm going to move very quickly to Bright. We had a couple of questions that came in for Bright as well, and I had a question here as well. I'm going to merge them once again because of time. The stuff that Bright is doing, the stuff that you're doing, Bright, it seems like little drops in an ocean, but it's very important work, because if nobody does anything, then nothing is going to happen. So I have to applaud you for what you're doing in the midst of all of this. Somebody had a question, and I think you kind of touched on it, but I'm going to ask it again just in case they missed it. They said, and this is from Temitope Oyesoya, she says, have you been able to reach children who do not have the media facilities? But I'm also interested to know a couple of things as well. So I'm just going to throw all the questions in for you. Is how have you been able to mobilize people to create this change that you're trying to create? Because you've talked about Delta State, you've talked about Ogun State, trying to infiltrate these different areas to get children educated in this time. And what are your thoughts on scaling post-COVID? Because these kids definitely need, or even during this pandemic, they still need help in terms of getting educated during this time. So what are your thoughts on scaling? It started off pretty small, but what kind of steps are you going to take to get it to grow and be bigger than what it is now?
Okay, thank you very much. I would quickly say for this period. So I've worked with a team of sound minds, people who are very dedicated. It's not something I'm doing alone. I'm not doing it on my own. I'm working with other Teach for Nigerian fellows who are in other places of their primary assignments. We are spread across Ogun State. Some of us had traveled before the nationwide lockdown because we were in conversation that there could be something like that. So from our different respective homes, locations, we've always had a way of meeting ourselves through Zoom, through different meeting calls. It could be WhatsApp, it could be phone calls, on how we could push this forward to make sure that we are able to achieve a reasonable amount of success level in trying to keep our learners learning. Not just them at this moment, but we're also looking at getting across to more learners, because there are lots of low-income communities everywhere, like I said earlier on. So far for me, it has been human capacity. We've had fellows, we've had individuals who are saying, notwithstanding that I have nothing to get in return, but this is the little way I can make my own little impact to make sure that these kids, these learners, wherever they are, notwithstanding their social status, are able to learn. So for us, it has been connecting with like minds, individuals who are willing to join in the movement. At the moment, I'm leading a team of about 40 fellows who are providing and producing this content that we're using for our different learning platforms. I'm also working with another team of 5 individuals on Adeju Thompson. You also talked about scaling. So basically, before COVID-19, Adeju Thompson has been able to train about 250 teachers online. We have trained them on STEM curriculum and other activities, 21st century skill that is needed to improve learners' academic and non-academic outcomes. So for us, post-COVID-19, we are looking at moving to some other locations in the country. For most of my team members, we are having just 2 more months left in the Teach for Nigerian Fellowship. So we'll be going to our respective homes, our respective states, probably where we are from before the fellowship. We're looking at scaling to those areas. We're looking at getting to the south. We're already working with some contacts in Kaduna to see how we could keep infiltrating the north. Of course, we started in Ogun State, and it's going to scale into Lagos, the likes of Oyo, Ibadan. All this we are putting into cognizance, notwithstanding that funding is actually an issue. But for us, we're working with what we have. Our mission is, let's start from where we are, because we believe that by so doing, definitely we'll get to that point we are looking at. So far for us, it has been a wonderful moment.
Great. And as far as the media, as far as the how you're training these children who don't have, the internet and all of these things, if you can just touch once again on how you're disseminating the training.
Okay, so for, like I said, for 90% of the children we are working with, we actually have done a survey and research, and we've been able to find out that about 90% of them don't even have radios. So when we're talking about running a radio project, it sounds like, wow, this would get across to all the children in Nigeria. But I must tell you, from the kids I've worked with in the class for the past 2 years, these kids don't even have chairs to sit in their houses. So they don't have anything per se. They just have a roof over their head. I had an experience where I had gone to one of my learners' parents to express my annoyance of the fact that this boy keeps coming to school and he doesn't have any learning material. But the moment I stepped into this house, I was overwhelmed with the situation of things there. Instead of kind of passing the message I had come there for, I congratulated the father. I said, "You are doing a very laudable job to be able to make sure your son comes to school, irrespective of what is happening in your home." So for me, looking at kids that are not having the necessary media skills and facilities, we are basically getting across to them doorstep by doorstep. I talked about the worksheets we have created. The essence of this worksheet is for some of our fellows to get to these children in their own houses, teach these children in their own houses, get those worksheets worked on, review them every week. That will be able to know what next we'll be doing the next week. For instance, if they've done very well from what we've taught this week, then we'll move to a new topic. If not, we'll see the possibilities of getting more worksheets, go back to those houses and get these things done. For us, we've also reached out, like I said, reached out the clerics who we are using their public address system. So like I said, it's not just about the kids we are working with directly in the classroom. It's about the kids in these communities. Over time, I've come to understand that these are the kids who would actually be the governors and the politicians that we have. My daughter would definitely tell me she doesn't want to be a politician. It's a dirty game. I'll just get my degrees dusted and work in one private hospital and all of that. So the truth is, if we want Nigeria to move forward as much as we do, we all must team up to make sure that these children in low-income communities, irrespective of where they are, get the necessary education that is needed for them to scale to a higher level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bright. All right, I'm going to move to Dr. Oleolo, who is doing something very interesting with PPE in Nigeria, which is, I mean, you more than anybody else can tell us, how important that is because of all the news that we've heard about, how inaccessible some of these materials have become and all of that. So great work with the PPE. Like you said, it hasn't really been certified or accredited yet, but at least it's getting the job done, which something has to happen for us to move this thing forward and to keep everybody safe. So once again, well done on that. As far as what the public can do to support the frontline workers, what would you say, all of us listening and everybody who will watch the recording after this, what can we do to support the frontline medical professionals that are working? And then there was a question that came in from Catherine Bickersteth about the materials, if they're made in Nigeria or imported. And I know you talked about somebody that you're working with locally. So if you could just kind of rehash on that, and then also tell us what we can do as the public to support what the frontline workers are doing, and maybe also to make your work a little easier, you know, as well.
Okay, thank you very much. The easier of those two questions is the PPE material, of course. It's made of neoprene and PVC. Neoprene's synthetic rubber. You'd be surprised. We talk a lot about the environmental impact of driving vehicles and all of that. But one of the side effects is something called butadiene, which comes from the emission of cars. So it's a gas which you can which very easily precipitates as a liquid. And it's the polymerization of that liquid, chloroprene, that produces neoprene. And this is not a new material at all. It's been in existence for well over 100 years. I suspect the neoprene we use is imported, but strictly speaking, there's no reason why this can't be made in Nigeria. Also, from the petrochemical industry, that's where you can get things like PVC, which is incorporated into the neoprene. So it's a compound neoprene PVC material. So, I mean, the lesson is there is no reason really why we can't make this in Nigeria and export it for commercial benefit. All we need to do is, first of all, make sure it's standardized in Nigeria. And then hopefully, once we're able to meet those standards, then there is a market out there that we can export it to. And that could either be regional in West Africa, the rest of Africa, or in fact, the whole world. In terms of what we can do to support frontline workers, how about this? Don't add to my work. That's the simple way to put it. Do not add to an already complicated situation. Don't add to my job. And the easiest way not to add to my job is just follow the instructions that the government and public health authorities have given us. So, very simple things. For goodness sake, do wear your face masks. It's very simple. If I have the virus, God forbid, but if I have the virus, that's if I've not already had it, I don't know. But if I have the virus, if I wear my face mask, the chances that I'll transmit it to someone else are reduced. If the person also wears a face mask, the chances that they will pick it up from me are reduced. Simple hand washing. You know, personally, despite the fact that I probably have a little bit of OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, I don't think I've ever washed my hands as many times as I have since COVID started. And honestly, if you haven't got to the stage where you cannot open a door unless you've got a piece of tissue on the door and you're throwing it into a bin, and you're opening doors with your elbows, then you're doing something wrong. You are not helping us. So definitely hand hygiene, definitely face masks, everyone in public, definitely avoiding social gatherings, and definitely proper social distancing. So let's go on, let's just talk a little bit more about that social distancing. Well, I don't know, for those of you who don't wear glasses, you may not notice this, but certainly for me, when I put my face mask on, I find my glasses mist. So I get this mist build up on my glasses. Now think about it. If I didn't have a mask, potentially all of that mist could be dispersed and someone else is taking all that mist in. Now, if that is an infected person, you're basically sucking in everything that they have to expel from their lungs. So there's no rocket science advice in all of this. It's the simple things that matter. Use your face mask, wash your hands, hand hygiene. Personally, I think hand washing is probably better than alcohol It's cheaper for starters. It is definitely cheaper. Well, of course, in communities where there's no water, maybe it's not cheaper. So we've got to be balanced. But a tub of alcohol wipes is probably 3,000 naira or thereabouts. A little bottle is probably 1,600. So it's quite expensive. So I would definitely say hand washing. I will definitely say social distancing. I will definitely say masks in public. And I would definitely say no unnecessary visits. I don't know the last time I've had any sort of social contact with anyone since the lockdown started. Outside work, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Oleolo. And I really do think that somebody needs to go into the grassroots and talk about this, because the images that we're getting and the videos that we're seeing about social distancing is very, very concerning, especially at the banks and just in general. You go to the petrol station, some of the attendants are not wearing their masks, you know, so even when you're trying to be as, like you said, using tissue to open the doors, using your elbows, you just don't see other people doing that. So somebody needs to really go out there. I guess we all need to play our part whenever we get an opportunity, is to just say to somebody, you might want to wear a mask. And if we have extra masks, why not give them out as well? So thank you. And hopefully we'll make your work a lot easier going forward. Okay, so moving on to Adeju. Great story there. I mean, you know, this is a guy who was literally just going about his business, going about his day, and was being accosted, so to speak, by people in the community, and just thought, hey, you know what, let me just try and give this guy some food for a couple of days, and literally created this amazing movement out of that, tapping into his network and raising so much money and feeding over 13,000 people in such a short amount of time. We do have a few questions that have come in for you, so I'm going to try to merge them all. But I think one of the main questions that I have is, are you going to continue this? Because I'm sure a lot of people want to know, is this something that you're going to continue even after COVID? And what are some of the steps that you're going to take? Or rather, what are some of the steps that you think made this work? And maybe somebody listening can adopt this. Because I think when it comes to these sorts of feeding projects, you know, like you said, it is a bit daunting. Like, where do you start from? But you took us through the step-by-step. And which of those steps do you think was the most important that really helped you get this thing off the ground to make it work, so that we can encourage anybody listening that's been thinking about going into their own little community to make this kind of change and has been holding back because they don't know where to start? So what advice would you give to someone about that? And yeah, that kind of piggybacks off of another question that came in for you from Irere Mena, who said, how can these types of feeding programs be sustained after COVID? So I'll let you answer those two questions, and then we'll take a couple more that have come in for you as well. Please keep your questions coming in. We are getting to the end of the event, but we'll see how we can squeeze a few more in before we wrap it up. So Adeju, over to you.
I think Adeju got disconnected for a moment, so he's trying to get back on.
Okay. So I'll move on to Doyinsola. We have a question that came in from Oluwa Temilorun Adebayo, who says, amazing work, and this is directed at Adeju and Doyinsola. Amazing work to both of you. What's the possibility of house-to-house distribution of relief items instead of gathering them, which leads to a mob? And this could also help with social distancing. So Doyin, how would you respond to that?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Yes, we actually did that. When we found out that it wasn't sustainable gathering people together, we started going house to house. But in the going house to house, people started gathering at the back of the car. So, okay, 1 second. Okay, sorry, 1 second. Yes, so we're going from house to house. And you know, when you're going from house to house, you stop and then you deliver and then you come back. We now noticed that there was like a mob behind the car. So we're doing like every 5 houses, you know, so that we can always be ahead of them. And in doing that, some people would get and some people won't. But the idea was just to at least give people, you know, people that were compliant, people that were, you know, social distancing and things like that. And then we're always going to go back to the community, get the people registered, you know, with us. Some of these communities are less than 500 people. So it's easier now for us to just register them and say, you know what, we're going to come back, you know, just write your names, we'll come back and then we'll give you something, you know, to sustain you for a week. or two. And, that's how we've been working now.
Fantastic. So Doyin, as far as post-COVID, will this water challenge continue? And I guess, how do you intend to make it sustainable? Because you are touching on an area that maybe most people didn't even think was an issue. And I'm curious to know what the water issues were for these people before COVID. But going forward, is this something that you think you'll be able to sustain and continue?
Yes, there's actually a bigger plan for water in Lagos State. And I realized that, talking to the ballets and the youth leaders and things like that, I realized that most of these water projects have been abandoned projects, abandoned boreholes, abandoned, piping and things like that. But what we're doing right now is water storage. So because we can't afford to do the boreholes now, and, because of what's going on, we can't even start. So we're just making sure that there are facilities on ground, 10,000 liter storage, 20,000 liter storage that we can put water in. But, post-COVID, we want to make sure that the water is even treated, so that we can reduce people buying pure water and littering the environment. And, moving forward, we also do something called we also have a project called Sworte, where we encourage women to bring in their plastic and then we buy from them. So the monies that we're getting from their plastic, a portion of it will be used to actually give them back water. So they know that whilst they're cleaning their environment, they're actually, putting something aside to, provide water for their community as well. So those are the low-hanging fruits that we're actually working on now. And we're also reaching out to other people and other, things like water bottles as well, because we want the children to have good water, going to school. So we're looking for people to provide water bottles, for the communities. We're looking for people to, provide filtration systems as well for us as well. And, gradually these infrastructure would be given to the communities to manage as well.
Fantastic. We have a question. Well, we have a couple of questions and comments that I wanted to quickly read out. Someone says, and this is Charity. Charity says, I really think Mrs. Ogunlesi should be given a bigger platform to speak to the younger audience about personal development. She has spoken amazingly well. So Mrs. Ogunlesi, everyone is looking for that to happen. While we're waiting for Adeju to get connected, we had a question about where the recording will be available. We're actually streaming live on Facebook right now. So, and as you know, on Facebook, it'll be available for 24 hours after the session, but we'll also be posting videos from this on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sworte Talks, as well, so that you can catch the replay of this afterwards. Let me just double check if Adeju's back. Okay, so he's back. So Adeju, I don't think you heard the question, but there were a couple of questions about, are you going to continue Fidikoi post-COVID? And what were, I guess, some of the most important steps that made it all work? You talked about how daunting it was, and there are many people who want to come out of their comfort zone and do something, but it just seems daunting. Where do I start? What do I do? And you were in that same place as just a regular person going about his business, and you were able to tap into your network and create incredible change. So post-COVID, will you continue Fidikoi, and what are some of the most important steps that you think made it all work? And then I'll throw this one in from Catherine Bickersteth about some of the main learning experiences that you got from all of this. I hope that's not too many questions at once, but let's just take them one at a time.
Well, we definitely do intend to continue with our operations at Fidikoi. We are currently in the process of registering Fidikoi as an NGO. It's a proper legal entity. So that's quite a process, and I find it takes about a month, So we have like I said, with Fidikoi, we became this family where there was so many people who were really inspired by what we were doing, and how can we help? And we have there's someone one of the amazing people who've been very kind to us, is currently trying to see how we can register Fidikoi. I think going on to the next question, I think one of the things that made Fidikoi very efficient was the fact that it is a grassroots initiative. Unlike I think with Feed Ikoyi, like, it was more like empowering people, like, reaching out to communities and asking them, how do you want to, feed yourself? What do you need from us? We have the money. So, even though like we had a collection center in on my street in Ikoyi, there's some communities that are a bit farther than where I lived. And what I just like, I'd go to those communities and like, find like a food vendor there and say, this is what Feed Ikoyi is doing. I'd like to get you on board. This is the process. We have a daily budget. I like to order like 300 meals to be provided for this community every single day. And so I didn't really need to be there. It's like, once you just tell the woman, this is what I want, and then you let the community know, oh, by the way, we've gotten this woman to provide meals for you, 150 every day or 100 or whatever, the community knows. So it's very collaborative, and it's very, so people used to ask me, oh, like, how are you sure, like, the women are providing the meals or nothing like dodgy is going on? And I was like, no, once you get everyone, like, involved, once people understand that this is what's going on, like, it really worked. So even like now where, we don't really have that huge operation where we're driving around Ikoyi to give out meals. Like now it's more like, it's like different communities are working on their own, and, they're providing for themselves. And I just like, pay for the meals in the evening. I think once you empower people, and it's not like this, disconnected thing where, it's like someone who doesn't understand how, it's like, what do you want? How can I help you? And the communities let me know what they want. And I was really happy that I was in the position to, like, to offer my support. I think one of the things that I learned from this whole Feed Ikoyi thing operation was that, I guess, also like as a young entrepreneur, like, with my personal work, it's a lot of like hard work and, just like believing in myself. But I think what Feed Ikoyi made me see in like this very clear ways that there's nothing you can achieve if you put your mind to it. Like, when I started Feed Ikoyi, I just wanted to, like, if we're just going to be able to, like, provide maybe 50 meals every day for a week, that I've been very proud of myself for. It just kept on growing and growing and growing. And I was just in this place, like, I'm going to make sure it works out. I just kept on reaching out to more people. And I guess, just being who I am and people trusting me, people felt comfortable in, like, sending me them, giving me, their funds to do what we do. So, yeah, like, I guess one thing I would say I definitely learned with Feed Ikoyi is that, there's no dream that's too big. There's nothing, just like start it. Just be professional. Like, like I said, like, when before I started Feed Ikoyi, I created a proposal, and I was a proper, like, professional thing about what we intend to do. I'd done all the budgets. This is how much I want to, like, this is how much it's going to cost to feed a person. This is how much it costs to feed, so and so people. So it was more like a crowd fund. This is how much money we need if I was going to feed 100 people for the next 1 month. I'm sure that's so funny because, like, in the beginning, the plan was to feed 100 people every day for a month. But after the second day, we started doing 150. By the third day, it was 500, then 1,000, 1,002, 900, 800. So, so it was like, well, I already had this thing. So I really, like, because of that, people, like, knew where I was going and just kept on coming in. And because of that, we was, like, expand our operation. So, yeah, so I feel very passionate about what Feed Ikoyi is doing. I think one of the way I sort of see Feed Ikoyi operating right now is that, I like the idea of maybe the idea of having, like, a soup kitchen in Obalinde. So this could be operational maybe every Friday, and people know that, at so and so time, you can go to this location and, and you can get, like, a home cooked meal. Depending on if we have a lot more funding, then this could be something that goes on every day. But like, I'm very, like, I feel like I'm very passionate about Feed Ikoyi, and and I'm just, like, I'm super committed to, like, as long as I have all the support I need, I hope to, like, continue doing what I do for as long as possible. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. We've come to the end of Sworte Talks. 2 hours gone by just like that. I feel very inspired, and I think everyone who has joined us today feels the same way. We've certainly seen that there is hope against all odds in what is going on, and I'm really grateful that I was part of this, and I'm really thankful to all our speakers for joining us this evening. Thank you, Mrs. Ogunlesi. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Misbah Oleolo. Thank you, Doyinsola Ogunye. Thank you, Adeju Thompson. And thank you, Bright Kemasuode. Kemasuode, pardon me. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your inspiring stories. I know for a fact that everyone has taken something away from today's session. I'm going to call on Mrs. Amba, one of our members at Sworte Talks, to do the vote of thanks, and then we're going to wrap it up. So thank you, and thank you to everyone for the questions. We hope you were able to get to your question. So Mrs. Amba, over to you. Mrs. Amba, is she there?
I think maybe she must have dropped off, so I'm sure she's trying to come back on.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for her to come on, let me just tell you, Sworte Talks, we are on all social media platforms. Please follow us. Please tell everyone you know to follow us as well. We do this because we want to inspire, we want to, influence, we want to do our own little parts to get everyone thinking about how they can make change in their own communities. And I think all our speakers today have shown that if we all just take what we have, do what we have, or what we can with what we have where we are, we can all really make change happen. So Sworte Talks is SWORTE Talks. Sworte stands for Stories Worth Telling, and that is what we're about. Typically, we would be at the Musan Center today, but as we all know, this is the new normal. So we're excited about this. We're actually excited about this. We're all in the comfort of our homes, still making change happen. So this is our new normal for Sworte Talks. So look out for the next one right here on Zoom for as long as we need to keep doing this till COVID blows over. I'm guessing Mrs. Amba is on now. Okay,
I think I'll just say
I was going to say, Dr. Ogunsoya.
Yes. So thank you very much indeed, Aderonke. You've done a brilliant job. Thank you very much indeed to our storytellers. A lot of the times we invite them, they don't know who we are, apart from Mrs. Ogunlesi, whom I know very well. Thank you very much, Doyin. Thank you very much, Misa. Thank you very much, I'm trying to remember the names now. The guy from Teach for Nigeria. You've all been brilliant. Your stories have been so inspiring. Thank you very much, Adeju, feeding 13,000 people. And Adeju is a very young man. Doyin herself is only 29, and they are doing amazing things. Very laudable indeed. Thank you very much for all that you've shared with us this afternoon. We really aspire to inspire people through stories, to share the stories of inspiration, and therefore change their mindsets, encourage people to know and that they can make decisions that will propel them to making differences in their communities. And all the stories we've had this afternoon has shown that there's nothing too little, neither is anything too big that we cannot do in our respective communities of influence. Just step out and do something. We are a very kind community. The COVID-19 has shown that Nigerians are really kind people. We are very compassionate. And those are the stories we've had this afternoon. We're doing better than other countries in that respect. And I'm very proud to be a Nigerian as a result of all of these stories we've shared today. Thank you very much to our members of our audience for being there, for listening to these stories from far and near. Thank you very much indeed to the members of my amazing team. They are just amazing, very, very dynamic, very, very passionate about what we do. May God continue to bless you all. So I hope that everybody is leaving with something today. I have learned a lot. And they're all very exciting projects. Please make a difference wherever you find yourself. Please let's continue to focus on the positives of Nigeria. We are brilliant people. We are creative people. We are kind people. So let us focus on about Nigeria and stop focusing on the negative aspects. So please leave charged, inspired, and encouraged to make a difference wherever you go. God bless Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed.
God bless.
Thank you. And on that note, I believe that our very first Sworte Talks online is a wrap. Thank you once again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next one, our 18th edition. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.